Welcome everyone to this webinar from the Vlad and Drew Microsoft Cloud webinar series in which we're going to talk about SharePoint Multilingual. First of all, let's introduce all of the people that we have on the call. My name is Vlad Catrinescu, a Microsoft MVP from Montreal, Canada, and I'm joined today, first of all, by my co-host, Drew Matalong. How are you doing, Drew?
Good, Vlad. Great to be here. And this is an exciting topic that I know one that you and I have both been looking forward to talk about.
And we also have two special guests actually today on the call. One of them was a last minute bonus edition, so we don't have the picture up yet. But let's start with DC Padur from the Microsoft team. DC, how are you doing?
Very well. Thank you very much, Vlad and Drew, for doing this and inviting us over to this special session. We are very excited to talk about this brand new feature and excited to answer our audience's questions.
Awesome. And our last guest, which was a surprise bonus guest, Matt Moody, actually also from the Microsoft team, but from the engineering side. Matt, can you please introduce yourself as well?
Hey, yeah, I'm Matt Moody. I'm one of the developers on the multilingual project, like you just said, and also excited to just hear from you guys and answer questions whenever I can.
Awesome. Now let's start talking about SharePoint Multilingual. Personally, and I'm not sure if we have other people from Canada here on the call with us, especially from Quebec, but multilingual is really a topic that's dear to my heart. I know in Europe, having multilingual sites sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't happen, but as somebody from Quebec, Canada, which is a French-speaking province, we have to have multilingual. It's like every project has to be multilingual. And SharePoint has supported multilingual for a while in the classic version, but we're not going to talk about that at all today. We're going to talk only about the modern version that actually just came out. And I see we have a lot of people here from Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. Happy to see a bunch of Canadian friends in here. Drew, how about you? I know
That's great.
you're from the US. Do you see a lot of multilingual needs in the US as well?
Absolutely. And I think that's why I wanted to highlight this one. And this is one of the first ones that we're kind of bringing to the table as far as solutions. So my role as a consultant, I do help organizations across the country and across the globe roll out SharePoint Online. And we do see, and I do see a lot of companies that have a need for this, right? And I think what's really cool about this kind of conversation is sometimes it's been in a nice to have, not necessarily, or if it's a requirement, it can be also nice to have, and empowering people to use multilingual and to take advantage of it will. I've seen from prior projects, it leads to better engagement. So I have done multiple intranets that use multilingual functionality that provide a good user experience, and allowing that in SharePoint Online, I mean, it's going to be a great addition kind of to the toolbox that we have.
Awesome. And just something that I forgot to say, just a bit of housekeeping. Yes, this webinar will be recorded. We'll be sharing the recording and the resources with you guys afterwards. And also at the bottom of your screen, you're probably going to see a Q&A button. If you have any questions, please ask them. Our goal is really to answer all of your questions today, and that's why we have two awesome folks from Microsoft that are here to help. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions that you might have.
Yeah, and especially from like the implementation side, I mean, so whether working with this, but thinking about the intranet in general, thinking about how to roll out communication sites and how this kind of fits into it. I mean, that's definitely an experience that Vlad and myself have been working with different customers across the globe or companies across the globe in how this functionality can work and how we could potentially see it working in all different size organizations. I think I'm going to kind of transition this one a little over to UDC now, so I'm going to stop sharing. And as I want to I'll start here with kind of DC. What is kind of the background on getting started with SharePoint Multilingual and Modern, and give us kind of a little bit of the history of this feature.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Drew and Vlad, for that introduction. I will quickly share my screen and start talking, just so there is something on the screen for everybody to look at. So thank you all. Thank you again for inviting us. So as you all on the call might be familiar, about 4 years ago, we sort of reinvented the entire SharePoint platform. We started towards the client-side development model, and we invested in making SharePoint more functional and useful out of the box, rethinking the entire modern workplace paradigm and how SharePoint fits into that mold. And we did a lot of work. We've been gradually rolling out features in the modern paradigm. So you see the modern team sites and modern pages and news and lists and libraries. And the culmination of a lot of these was towards a primary scenario of SharePoint, which is the communication scenario, content distribution scenario, where you build up sites for a lot of users to come and consume content. For that communication paradigm, we had this new communication sites platform as an out-of-box offering for our customers to quickly get started with their communication needs in their organizations. And over the time, we've been building up the out-of-box capabilities of that platform. And there are typical publishing requirements that come with having sites constructs in an organization. You want to be able to publish news and publish pages, and you want to be able to comment on and on pages and comment on news distribution. And audience targeting of news was a feature that was asked, and we had rolled it out last year. And over the period, we've been hearing about multilingual, and as Vlad mentioned, multilingual has been supported in the classic world in different capabilities, and trying to rethink that capability in this modern workplace paradigm has been top of our mind. We started working on it last year, and now we are here. We are trying to showcase the publishing capability, the multilingual publishing capability that's available out of the box to help our customers with their top level portals. So when you think of a top level portal in a large organization, either driven by the governmental or the legal requirements, like in the case of Quebec or even some countries in Europe, or the general facilitation of content consumption in your organization's preferred languages. So it's about employee engagement. So we want to make sure that the modern workplace is inclusive. Modern workplaces are catering to the diverse needs of a distributed workforce. And one aspect of that is making sure that top important and information content is available in the preferred languages of the consumption of the consumers of that content. So towards that end, you can think of an HR portal or a travel portal where you want to make sure that information is accurate and information is also highly curated and catered to the various the diverse audience and the languages that they might want to consume in. So that's the scenario we wanted to chase right away, and that was one of the big blockers for the adoption of communication sites was the out-of-box capability for multilingual. And that's been so we've had it in the back of our minds. It came to the forefront when we had the basic communication site platform built out, rolled out, and well adopted. And now we are sort of at the game where more advanced features are being enabled on this communication site platform to help with the more advanced needs of our customers in the employee engagement paradigm and employee engagement scenarios, right? So that's multilingual genesis in short. Drew and Vlad, I'm going to keep continuing with my demo. Feel free to interrupt me with questions if anything is popping up, and I look forward to answering those things.
While you open the demo, sorry DC there, while you open the demo, we already got a first question regarding your slide. Is that timeline worldwide, so US and Europe, for the rollout or only for North America?
Worldwide.
Worldwide, awesome.
Yes, that's a great question. So maybe I will update the slide to say worldwide right there. So whoever is seeing the video can have that question answered. Okay, thank you for that question. And so we're going to begin the journey with the site creation. One of the nuances of site creation that many people might not have paid attention to is the fact that the choice of a default language of the site begins at the site creation. And most of you must be familiar with these site creation interface that you get in your SharePoint start page. You have the choice between a team or a communication site. You click on a communication site, you choose one of the available designs, you create a name. And then there is this thing called select a language, right? This defines the default language of the site. And this is also important a construct in the multilingual feature that is built on top of this. So in any content creation process, the journey begins in a certain language and gets translated into a different language. What language is the default is governed by the default language of the site itself. So when you create a site with the default language English, it means that all pages and news are first created in English in that site, and then translated into all supported languages in that site by the site editors and translators in that site. So just making sure that folks are paying attention to this field when they begin their journey. And one other key thing to remember is this cannot be changed after a site has been created. The default language of a communication site cannot be changed after the site has been created with a language that's been picked. So with that context, I'm going to switch over to a site that I have pre-created for the sake of this demo. I'm going to be calling the site Human Resources and Benefits. And you can see that it's a basic site with a couple of news articles and a quick links web part. It could be as more complicated as required, but for the sake of this demo, I'm trying to keep it simple so folks can quickly follow along. Any questions so far? No.
There is one question that you're probably going to laugh at a bit, DC. So the question got in at 110, and it was, is this also for modern team sites or only communication sites for now?
Great question. It is only for communication sites, and this is the version that we are rolling out, and we're beginning to roll this out, and it's for the communication sites only. The reasoning and the story behind that is communication sites platform in general have been built up as the effective mechanism for driving a publishing scenario or a publishing site where content is created and top level portal experience are generated, right? So a communication site is the primary portal scenario. So that's where we are beginning multilingual publishing in that context. Happy to hear opinions and suggestions for why it should be on team sites as well. We're not ruling it out. It's just not in the current scope of the feature rollout.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and I think, sorry, Drew.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of chime in on that. I think that's a good discussion point. So in the work that I see, the main need and the work that I always come through is around the communication sides of it. So actually the last big multilingual work project I performed was actually literally what we're looking at here. It was an HR benefits and resource site with the intention to be built for communication, not necessarily built with the intention for internal teamwork. So there are functionalities within the browser or within SharePoint in general from sites perspective to see things differently, but not necessarily the large scale need for translation of news inside of like a team site. Like the use case is a little bit less. So when I'm seeing that and I'm looking at building out intranets and communication portals, you are building it with communication sites on the back end, and that should be the tools that we're working with to start with. So personally, I am seeing more of that start today, especially with the addition of HubSite, with the power of HubSites, kind of how to plan your IA for an intranet. But again, all built with comm sites on the back end. So I think DC for like the rollout and what we're seeing, I definitely think it's very valid for that kind of work.
Awesome. Thank you. So with that, so what I'm showing you here is a person, Lydia Holloway, is logged into a demo tenant here, and a site has been set up for human resource and benefits. This page is set up in English. You can see the navigation node is in English, and then the site name is in English. And the way multilingual gets enabled is through the site settings page. So I'm going to take you through the site information panel, through which you can go to the site settings experience and language settings. So obviously, for the sake of the demo, I've already set up turn this on. So by default, when this feature is rolled out into your tenant, and when you go create a com site or even an existing communication site, your experience would be that this is default turned off. What you would then do is enable the pages and news to be translated, pick the languages that you want to support, and have a translator assigned. And this is optional. Having a translator helps with the communication between the content creator in the default language of the site and the folks that are responsible for translating content in this site. So again, the scenario we are after is the highly curated, handcrafted messaging sites where the content has to be individually created by somebody and also translated by another human. So what the system right now allows is enables the creation of content in multiple languages and making sure the translators are aware of when primary content is created and when they have to pay attention to changes coming in, and making sure that they are given the right kind of links to begin with that translation. And we'll go through all of that scenario right here. So what I have done is, again, for the simplicity sake, I have picked Spanish. I'm most comfortable with. You can pick any of the available I want to say 49 or 50 languages in this in SharePoint, and have each one of those languages associated with translators as an optional parameter in the setup of the multilingual experience. And then you hit save, and now your site is multilingual enabled. Then begins the journey of how do you begin creating content and translating the content.
Hey,
So,
DC, just
yes.
give me 1 second. As we just talked about enabling, I have quite a few questions here that I want to validate.
Sure
So
thing.
First of all,
I will go back. Yes.
So first of all, if somebody already has an intranet in English, even if the feature was not there when they created that communication site, they can go in and turn it on now, right? So it works for existing sites as well.
When this multilingual feature rolls out, they can go enable the translation of pages and news in existing communication sites. Correct.
Okay, perfect. And the other one is more of a confirmation. I think you said it, but I just want to double check. We cannot change the default language on existing sites, correct?
Yes. Any site that you create with the default language, it's forever for the life cycle of that site. You cannot change the default language of the site after creating the site.
Okay, awesome. And the last one that just came in actually, what's hidden under advanced settings there? People are curious, it seems.
Yeah, so this is, absolutely. So this is something I would just show in here. This has been in SharePoint for a long time, and this is something about overwriting translations. And I will go through that scenario when we talk about the MUI experience. MUI is the multilingual user interface. So when you think about publishing in a communication sites, there is the site structure itself, and which is the site title and the navigation nodes and the footer. All of these things are the structure of the site. And then when you think about content, it's the pages and SharePoint news, the modern pages and news experience. So when you have multilingual experiences for the structure and the content, you have a full multilingual site experience. So I will touch upon this when we get to the point of translations for the nav nodes and the site names and stuff. But if I may recommend for the primary scenario of having a multilingual site, you do not want to turn this on. Overwriting translations is not something you want in the context of setting up a multilingual site. You want to make sure that every person creating content in the site sticks to their language and allows the translator to have an option of either making the change or not. You do not want overwriting in any scenario here. So I would recommend staying away from toggling this button. It exists for a legacy reason. We are trying not to put it front. That's why it's actually hidden behind advanced settings.
And DC, would you say a good way to kind of speak to this is there are roles that are required in managing multilingual, right? Like it is not a single resource or a single person who would necessarily be managing and controlling the variations of the translations on the site itself. So the
Yeah.
reason to overwrite isn't necessarily not, you don't want to have the concept of overwrite. You want to empower the translators, which would be a role for someone in this environment to perform those actions, and you want them to control it as they are the owners of that language, right? Not allowing, so the way that's communicated, I think that's very important, because what is typed and what is entered is can be misconstrued by automatic translation.
Absolutely. So there is no automatic translations here, so I don't want to bring that in right now. So this feature is about building system support where multiple languages content can be created in a site and end users can consume it effectively, and we'll see this through the demos. There's no auto translations here. And even the override setting here only applies to the site name, navigation, footer, what's typically known as MUI, the multilingual user interface. That's what it applies to. It does not apply to the page content or any of the news content that goes into the site itself. So that's very important. So the next, the question was, I wouldn't go as far as to, in typical cases, yes, there are multiple people involved, but I would even say if you are a bilingual person, you are actually wearing a multiple persona hat. So you will wear the hat of content creator in English and then go wear the hat of translator, and you would do the job of both the personas. But yes, this entire setup requires multiple personas with language capabilities targeting the site the way it is set up.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome. So now I'm going back to my home. This is as far as the admin's job goes. A site administrator, a site owner will go enable the languages, assign the translators, and their job is done. And now comes the job of the site editors and the folks that create content on the site itself, right? So for simplicity's sake, you see that this page is in English, and you can see now that this is the enabling of the feature has resulted in a drop down for language selection to navigate between available pages. And in preparation for this demo, I already have a Spanish version of this page created, and I can navigate to that Spanish page by clicking on Spanish, and you will see that this is showing you Spanish content in there with Spanish labels, Spanish words in there. So what has happened in the back is when you create a page, you kick off translation, and that creates copies of the page for you to enter translations. I have done that ahead of time for the home page and showing you that this language drop down lets you navigate between the available pages. I'm going to go back to this English page and let me pick this news article here. So expand your skill set. So this is an English article, and you've had this article for a long time. With this new feature that's rolled out, you would like to have the multilingual support for this page, and the journey begins with, all right, I'm ready to have this specific page translated. I engage with this translation button that has now magically shown up on this page because of the feature being enabled. I click on translation. Now it says there's a translation panel that opens up that allows you to create copies of this page to have translations made in those pages. So as you can see, there's only one page in this scenario. If you had multiple, you could choose to do all the languages at the same time or one language at a time. And in this scenario, I'm just going to create the Spanish translation and done. So as the primary content creator, the Lydia Holloway person has created this primary page, and they've now kicked off the translation. So as you remember, there was a translator associated with this language, right? The Spanish language had a translator associated, and now I'm going to switch to the email inbox of this person. So now Santiago was the translator. Santiago gets an email that says Spanish translation has been requested for this page. So this is the reason why you want to have translators, is now even if the translator is not paying attention to the site directly, they get an email notification that says Spanish translation has been requested, and they could just engage with the start translation button in here, which directly takes them to the copy of the English page that was created for the Spanish translator to now come and add the translations into the page. So this person, Santiago, their default language, their Office 365 language is Spanish. So that's why you would see that all of their experiences are in Spanish. All of the command surfaces are in Spanish. And now being the Spanish person, you would then go edit this translation page. And for the sake of expediency, I'm going to just put a tag in there. And this just makes this Spanish. Let's assume that I've translated this to Spanish. If I can type Spanish. Okay, so now what's happened here is the scenario is where a primary page has been created. The page has been perfected in terms of content. Lydia has then kicked off the translation page. The translator has been notified that this page requires translation, and the translator will go in and add all of this content, and then they will go and publish the translation. So in terms of the scenario completion, what I want to show you, if I can get if you go back to the home page of this site, now you would see that the published Spanish version is showing up in the roll-up experience right there. So another page that exists in the site, I'm going to show you the scenario where the publishing of a page results in an email notification. So for the sake of this demo, so this was another page that already was notified to the translators. The translator spent the time translating all the content. You can see that all of this is in Spanish. They had finished saving the page. Now they are going to, Santiago as a translator will publish this page. And from a scenario completeness perspective, we want to make sure that the act of publishing the page goes as a notification to the original page creator as well. So let me see if the notification came through. It's not here yet. Some notifications take some time for the emails to arrive, but typically the scenario is about.
Well, this gets in, DC. I'm going to keep you busy with questions. Don't worry.
Sure, absolutely.
So first of all, just a validation, one of the questions I have, so the pages are stored in a folder inside the site pages library, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, perfect. What else? For the translators, do we have to put individual persons, or we can also put like a Active Directory group?
That's a great question. The initial rollout is going to have support for individual translators. We are going to quickly follow through with support for Active Directory groups, Office 365 groups.
Oh,
coming.
DC.
Matt,
sorry. Yeah, actually, I think we're going out the gate with Active Directory groups as well as email-enabled security groups.
That's fantastic. I was actually baiting you to give me that answer.
that was a silent ping somewhere in the chat.
That was good.
Yes, I knew this because this morning when I was testing it resolved it for me as a modern group, but I wanted you to come and say something. All right, cool. So yes, thank you for the question. The answer is we thought there was going to be a delay in the modern group catch-up the support for that, but it's coming together. That's fantastic.
Awesome. And one last one, unless your notification came in, what about the menus? How does it work with the site menu, the navigation menu, and the hub navigation?
Absolutely. Great question. All right, let's go through that experience right now. So I'm hoping both the audience is now comfortable with two personas. There is Lydia, who is an English user who is creating content. English is the default language of the site. Spanish is the second user language enabled on that site, and Santiago is the Spanish translator of the site. And together they are helping set up the multilingual page experience, multilingual site experience for this resources and human benefits, right? So let's go back to the site. So imagine there was, Lydia is now going to add a new navigation node that says, the only thing I know is hello. Imagine she adds a navigation node, hello. We will assume it's something more meaningful in a real case, but this navigation node has been added and now it exists only in the English language. And when the same site is now accessed by a Spanish user, which in this case would be Santiago. I'm going to refresh the site. Couple of things I want to quickly point out is when a Spanish user accesses the site, it automatically routes the user to the Spanish version of the homepage. They did not have to. I'm going to replace this. So as you can see, I'm going to open this in a new tab and I'm going to go to that tab, and it automatically opened the site in the Spanish language, and it automatically renders all the Spanish content for you. And as you can see, the news experience automatically rolls up the Spanish language news. So the Spanish user will see the Spanish translations in the news web part, and you will see that obviously the first news article is for pretend sake translated, but the second one was actually translated and published, and both of these are Spanish news. Now coming back to the navigation story here, now you see that the hello shows up here. So when somebody creates the navigation node in the default language, that is the only language seen by all the end users of this experience, including this Santiago, who is the Spanish user. But given that this person is also an editor, they can now go into the edit experience and update the hello to whatever the Spanish translation. I believe that would be hola. So this way, just like the news, just like the page where content is first created in English and a translator persona will come in and add the translation, site names, the navigation nodes, footer, out-of-box footer nodes, all of these things, they get created in English. A Spanish translator, a Spanish user will then log into the same site, assuming they have the same edit permissions. They will then be able to add the corresponding Spanish labels to the site. So from an end user perspective, English users will see English labels, English site name, English content. Spanish users will automatically get routed to Spanish pages with the Spanish nav experience, Spanish site names, and they now also can switch between Spanish and English for the page and news content if they feel comfortable with that language in that instance. So for example, Santiago is happy with the Spanish, but they're like, hey, I want to see what this page looks like in English, and I'm going to switch to the English language, and I can now actually see your resources in English, doctor all of this in English, and I'm going to navigate to this new ergonomics program. I'm like, oh, this is what the news article looks like in English. I can switch back to Spanish right there. The same news article renders back in Spanish. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to head back to the home page. I'm going to click on my site name, head back to the home page. I'm continuing my journey in Spanish. The scenario is now complete. The journey begins with an administrator, set up the languages, assign the translators, editors, set up the site structure. As and when new content appears, the translators are notified. The translators can then go and add the translations and publish the content. End users can switch between available languages and have a complete multilingual experience on the communication site.
That's really cool. One quick question, since you showed the default experience, what is actually in a way from a more technical point of view, what does SharePoint use to know what is the default language of that user? Is it the profile setting, the browser, or is it something else?
So that's a great question. So in Office 365, the user profile has a language associated, and that's what we primarily are using it to determine a user's language. And there is an entire sync story about how it goes from the Azure Active Directory to the SharePoint profile to individual sites. There is an entire syncing story around that. But at the end of the day, it's the language of the user determined in the AAD profile is what governs the user's language experience in SharePoint. If that is not available for some reason, we default to the web language, which is the site web language. If the site web is English, and if I can't figure out a user, if SharePoint can't figure out a user's language in SharePoint Online, it would default to the site web language. And it looks like my email arrived. As you can see, no, that's the old email. I got excited. Never mind.
Okay, I'll keep you busy. Don't worry. One question I had actually from 5 different people in different formats, but so just to confirm, it's still in a way a manual translation process. There is no, remember the machine translation we had before where you could do some automatic translation? There's nothing automatic, at least in this first version, right?
Yes, that's why I was saying the context for this feature is we have set up this as a publishing framework, a publishing system support, which requires the content to come from the customer. So auto translations is not part of this feature. I understand that it's a top ask from a lot of our customers as well, but the step 1 is having system support where an individual site can cater to the language needs of content creators and the language needs of end users, and making it a seamless experience going between the languages. That's what we are after with this first the rollout of this feature.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'll let you continue.
Okay.
But yeah, so I have a ton of questions. If you ever looking for stuff while waiting for something, just let me know.
Oh, absolutely. So while we are waiting for the publish notification, I will show you that it typically so what I'm looking for is
gotta love the demagogues in a live demo, right?
I know, man. That's okay.
You should have sacrificed the site collection before the webinar.
There you go.
For the demagogues.
So an email of this kind would have appeared where the Spanish translation of home is the home page. While I was setting up for the site, I actually got the notification. The Spanish translation was published would be the email that goes back to Lydia from Santiago. So Santiago was the Spanish translator who is publishing the translations, and we make sure that the translation comes through. So one of the things here, so what I'm also demoing here is the fact that we have intelligence built into the notification scenario. So what we do not want, while I'm compressing the timeline of translations into a 30-minute demo or a 1-hour demo, typical experiences span maybe a day, maybe a couple of days. And what we don't want is the constant spamming of email where some, Santiago saved a draft, Santiago made a change. You don't want to be peppered by emails, and we've built in, intelligent batching logic that makes sure that meaningful events are sent in meaningful time intervals. Of course, intelligence can be tricky. You can get it right many times and you get it wrong sometimes. So we are learning through that system. But the idea being that we're not constantly peppering you with updates. So one important scenario that would be very interesting is what happens when a page is updated. So we went through the scenario of a brand new page creation, and then the page got published and the creator got notified about the publication. So let's walk through the scenario. This is the home page that Lydia had created a while ago, and it's time for a refresh. And Lydia goes to this home page, and she wants to no longer call this recent news. She's going to call this important news, right? And maybe then she decides I am going to add another link in here. Let's see, from a link, I'm going to call it right, and something like this. So basically, Lydia made an update to this homepage, and she is happy with the changes she's made. She's going to save the draft. And while she's getting ready to publish this, the fact that a change has been made to the homepage will then get notified to the translator. And you can see that that scenario worked, and Santiago now gets an email that says, hey, the English version of homepage was updated. Spanish translation may be needed. Update the translation. So what this tells you is deep links you back to the homepage in the Spanish language, and you can go make the changes. And what would be what's useful also here is the translator can head back to the English page. They are now seeing the last updated version, and they can go into the details of this page and look at the history of versions. This is another feature that we've been rolling out recently, which is a visual diffing experience that clearly tells you where the change happened. So this is highlighting the difference between, this says these are the two web parts, the changes have happened. And if there was actual text changes in a text web part, they would also be highlighted in this diffing experience. And now the translator can be confident about what changes they want to bring back into their Spanish translations, and they can then go make those translations and publish the translation.
And I just want to call out that that version history is awesome. And it is totally out there. I mean, I think it's a super great addition for multilingual to kind of really see some of that, but it also does empower sites kind of across. So not just for multilingual, but very helpful in the scenario for supporting and understanding where translations have changed.
Absolutely. Great. So one of the questions was around hub navigation as well. So this site obviously is just a standalone site, but if this was converted into a hub, then that hub navigation can also have a multilingual experience. And I can do a quick demo of that if we have the time. And Vlad, feel free to start peppering me with questions when I am setting this up.
Okay, perfect. So there's some people that are really watching every single detail of your demo, DC.
Really are.
And so there's a few questions in there. So one of them is, you're logged in as Santiago, and you switched to the English site, but the menu has remained in Spanish. So as soon as you go, as long as you're in the site, the menu will remain in your original language. Am I correct?
Yes. So that's a great question. So the scenario the language selector is serving is when you think about the site structure, the name of the site and the navigations and the footer are things that don't change that often. Those are the anchors for your experience. So those respect your site language, your default language automatically, and they stay consistent throughout your experience. The language selector, on the other hand, helps you consume the content on the page. So when you're looking at a certain specific news article about the new ergonomics program, and you are like, I'm reading this content, I would like to read this in English. And that would be the experience powered by this language selector, is that allows you to change just the language content of the page while retaining the anchoring experiences of your site. I will full disclosure. Obviously, there are two camps. This is the dresses in different colors, blue and white versus gold and black, whatever that difference is. Like, hey, I want everything changed versus I want only the page to change, is a battle that we've had in our own feature crew, trying to figure out the best approach. And we think the scenario is best served by helping end users switch the language content without distracting too much of the Chrome experience or the site structure experience, so that anchors their primary experience. That makes sense?
That makes sense, and I can definitely see how there are two camps in this. I think you're going to have people with strong feelings on each side of the argument. So I understand why it's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, we will roll this out, hear the feedback. Obviously, we are here to serve customers. And if there's overwhelming feedback on either direction, we will try to fix this accordingly in the next iterations of this feature.
Awesome. And a quick follow-up question.
Sure.
If you add something to the menu while in the Spanish language,
Uh-huh.
Can you add something in there? What will be the behavior when that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go do that demo right now, right? So let's I will reset up the experience. So I am Santiago. Santiago is the Spanish translator whose default language is Spanish. While that person can serve the function of updating the primary English content into Spanish, they can also go, for example, go add a navigation node. So they would then go, I had a header and I'm going to call it Hola 2, right? Or let's do this.
I love the hola too.
Sorry, muy bien.
Muy bien.
Muy bien.
There we go.
Maybe adios.
Okay, well, muy bien, very good. So the few Spanish words that I know. So let's call this muy bien. And Santiago can add muy bien as a navigation node, and they would think that they have added the Spanish navigation node. But the fact of the matter is, this navigation node does not have English content associated. So the entire site assumes that this is what has to be shown to all users. So when I go to the site as Lydia, who is the English speaker, and I go refresh this, and looks like my email arrived, and I'll switch to that in a second. It will continue showing muy bien, and it's up to Lydia to go edit this and call this very good, right? Very good, right? Muy bien is very good.
Yes.
So for this reason, we always recommend that the content get created, including site navigation and site header, site name, everything gets created in English first, so that the translator can then go add the translations back. So otherwise it leads to this race condition of the Spanish translator creates the Spanish node, but because the default does not exist, the system thinks that this entire string that was entered is in fact the English node, and it shows that to everybody. So then now the Spanish author has to go back and recreate the Spanish translation. So I would show what happens here. So this is always the reason why the default language matters, and we recommend that content creation begin with the default language first and then go to the translation experience. So if you refresh.
And so for that one, just to make sure we're saying that, I mean, so everything you'd start, you have to have the default that's there. And if there is a change on a piece of content, that the notification, so you make a change, you notify the translators then after that change, but it would still be default. The English would still be there.
Yes, English would still bear. So the English label will still be there. The Spanish translator can come and then add. So what happened here? So I will walk you through the experience. Even though Santiago added muy bien as the as a navigation node, because it was not the default language, the system assumed that to be default language, which then got updated by Lydia. So now it's actually, this is the right process is where Lydia adds a nav node in English as very good, and then Santiago comes in and updates this to muy bien. That is the right sequence of steps to follow for a cohesive experience. So now going back, okay, the published email has not come yet. That's okay. It'll eventually come, but that's the scenario.
And so for notifications, DC, do you want to confirm that will only the translators receive notifications?
The page, the person who modified the page will get copied on the email that gets sent to the translator. And Matt, you should jump in and make sure that I'm saying the right things here.
Yeah. So there's three kinds of notifications. There's translation requested. That's the first one we saw. The second one that we saw was the original page was updated. Those two types of notifications both get sent to the translators and CC'd for the original page author. And then the third type of translation that unfortunately is getting batched just due to the compressed timeline of our demo here. That third type where the translation gets published, that gets sent directly to the original language's page author, and then the the translator actually gets CC'd in that case.
So there are two entities involved in this in the content creation and translation. We want to make sure that both of them are in the email notification chain.
Oh, and just to answer Chantal's question really quick, the notifications are currently sent in the language of the site, the default language of the site for everyone.
Oh, that's a good question. Yes. So as you all were watching, I just made this site as a hub. I'm going to navigate to that site. And you will see that, hello, pronto, there is a hub navigation right there. And as Lydia, I would go in there and add home and save this. And now as Santiago, I will go open this in a new tab. As Santiago, I can then go edit the home. I want to say Hogar. Okay.
If it was French, I could help you, DC, but
that's okay.
In Spanish, unfortunately, it's limited.
That's fine. Look, we're trying to demonstrate something here. So just like the site navigation and the site name, the hub navigation can also be translated into individual languages, so that when a Spanish user lands on the site, so they will automatically see the Spanish homepage, the Spanish navigation nodes. I think I chose the language to be English, so it's forcing me to be in English in a previous setting. So now this is in Spanish, and English users continue seeing the English content. Cool. Any other questions that I haven't yet answered, Vlad?
DC, I see we have about 6 minutes left, and you have 24 questions.
Let's do rapid fire.
Rapid fire questions.
Are you starting at the top, Vlad?
Yeah, I'll start at the top. Some of them will be super easy. First one, is this going to be available on premises as well, or only online?
Only online.
Perfect. What about content type and site column names? And that includes all of the list and document library.
Matt.
So the site column names are translatable. I'm not sure about the content type name. We'd have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you very much.
But from a scenario perspective, we think for the communication sites with pages and news experiences, the site columns don't come into play from a consumption point of view. So when you're creating in a top level portal, you don't directly land them in a library experience to have site column experience. Not to say that's not possible. It's just not the popular scenario.
Okay, another question about guest access. Can translators be external users, or do they have to be internal?
So they have to be Active Directory users within the tenant. They need to be given permission to the site. Being a translator does not provide permissions to the site in and of itself.
Awesome.
Yes.
As far as that top question, if we have other sites that has news web parts that shows news from the communication site, will they also reflect the language of the current user? So if the other site is marked, if the other site has multilingual pages enabled, we will show the pages of the appropriate language within this site's page as well. So if this is a Spanish page and you have a highlighted content web part, for example, on the Spanish page, you should get Spanish pages or untranslated pages if the page has no translations showing up in that highlighted content web part.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Question. I have used a multilingual PNP solution. What changes do I need to make to migrate to the out-of-the-box model?
I'm going to leave that to the owners of that. Julie Turner would probably have some documentation going live with this at some point. She and our feature crew, Matt Moody, we are working closely on helping her unblock that scenario, but I would leave it best with her. I think there is some effort to go address that scenario.
Awesome. We had
Mahmoud, I think I answered your question with my last answer as well.
with the search. Can you just repeat it, search specific, how that would work?
Yeah, of course. So by default, with the roll-up web parts, we do filter based on language if there is a translation available. Otherwise, we show the original language page. There is a managed metadata property based on the fields that we've created to track which language the page is representing. I don't have the exact name of the managed metadata property available for you in this format, but it is available.
Awesome. What next? Matt, do you actually, I see you have the Q&A open. Do you want to do a rapid fire with DC? That'd be cool.
So let's see. Can we prevent the view of, for simple users, for example, of non-translated content up until all languages are available? Yes. So if there is a draft of a translation, it will not. You will not be able to see the original language page for users in that language. So let's say you have an English page set up, and you have a draft of a Spanish page. The Spanish users won't see anything until the Spanish page is actually published. I hope that answers that question.
On that one, Matt, just to make sure, I mean, the key one there is it still uses SharePoint publishing. So the visibility of the page, it's using SharePoint pages, and visibility of those pages is still using the built-in SharePoint publishing solution.
Yes.
Awesome. Next one, and I'll give a bit of context from the question from Chantal. What do you know by heart? What is the Active Directory property where you need to set the language?
Oh, for the user.
Yeah. If not, I can follow. We can follow up after. I'm probably going to do a blog post with all of the questions and their answer and run it by you guys. But yeah,
let's do that.
It's their preferred language colloquially, but I don't have the exact property name for you, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we have about a minute, so I want to make sure that we close out with some ending comments. So I have the construct of this feature is having a system-wide support for pages in multiple languages with effective creation flows and effective consumption flows. Obviously, auto translations is not part of this, but feel free to give us your feedback on how much you want it. That helps us fix that and get it done that much faster. So yeah, we will obviously have we have the public documentation here, spo.ms/MLP, multilingual publishing. So please use this, and all content will be referred to from that documentation as well. And obviously, there's going to be other blogs from our esteemed MVP partners as well.
Awesome. We're at the top of the hour. I know you guys are busy. For everybody that attended, thank you guys very much for taking the time. I really hope that you found this valuable. Since we have quite a few questions that we're not able to get to, I will collect them. I'll write up the answers to what I can in a blog post, run it by DC and Matt, who are going to fix all of the errors I did. And when I send the recording and the slides, well, actually the recording, we don't really have that many slides. The recording and the resources, I'll add a link to that blog post. So this way, we're really able to answer everything. And also, I guess for DC and Matt, you guys also have a place to point people until all of the cool resources you guys are working on are built.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's fantastic. Thank you all.
Thank you all, and have a great day. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.